No worries. Glad everything's mostly okay.
We are all right. And we are now live. Hey, folks, thanks for tuning in to the BAMF podcast. And I apologize for being slightly late today. And to make up for it, I will play the audiovisual musical intro that attests the fact we're a high production values professional podcast. Hang on a second. That's kind of loud, right?
Yeah, I'm with Jim on this one. It's like, yeah.
Jim throwing the goat horns. All right. So, Loki, whole lot happened. What do you guys think?
So Easter egg laden episode. We get the Thanos copter, the Frog of Thunder, and the alligator Loki. So Jess Nevins did the research on where the alligator Loki comes from.
Oh, do tell.
So this is a deep among deep cuts. And it's so deep that it could be a coincidence, but it's so weird that I don't think it is. Okay. It's 1964. And Millie the Model is still outselling every single Marvel superhero book. And so as a cross-market promotion, Loki shows up in a 3-issue run in Millie the Model. And in the course of that 3-issue story, he transforms into a bunch of things. It's kind of a Mixolydic story.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, he turns into her boyfriend and breaks up with her so he can see other people, like, Loki stuff. But in this one sequence, he's a baby. He's like this weird, creepy baby in the first issue. And he turns into an alligator in the crib for one panel.
That is a deep cut.
That's fantastic.
I have to assume that somebody involved with the show, has this comic, or their parents had that comic and they read it as a child, because that's how that shit happens.
Yeah. Goddamn,
There's a fantastic set photo of what they used for the for Loki alligator. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
I saw that.
It's got its own little chair.
Yeah, little stuffed alligator. Apparently, they did a lot of versions of it. Like, it was going to look more cartoony for a while,
Okay.
but the more realistic it looked, the funnier it was. So they just kept.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think it would have been too jarring if it was like the cartoon. We already have Miss Minutes. We don't need another, cartoon character.
Yeah.
For the episode itself, aside from the Easter eggs, I love this episode.
Yeah.
This episode and the last episode wasn't here for the recap, but the back half of the show has been great. Like the reservations I had at the first 3 episodes are like completely gone. And I was mentioning on Twitter, when Loki gives the speech, he's in the bunker, he's with the other Thors, and he gives that speech, and he's like, "It's alive, we can kill it."
Yeah.
And he gives this great, it's in role-playing parlance, I said, he rolls a nat 20 on his charisma check to inspire the audience, to inspire the group of people. And the DM was still like, "Fuck you, plot says everyone laughs at you."
It was a good speech.
And it was delivered so well, because it could have been so poorly done.
But, of course, I mean, he can't deliver a bad speech, right? Unless it's on purpose. Like, he knows what he's doing. What it's interesting, what I love about this version of Loki is that every plan he comes up with is bad. Right? Like, he thinks they're all great plans, but when Sylvie shows up, she's like, "That was your plan. Kill it. Like, that's the one thing we need to not kill, and you were going to kill it." He's like, "Well, yeah." He's kind
and all the other Lokis just immediately are like, "Yeah, I didn't think it was right."
Yeah.
Just immediately.
It's a commentary on that Loki to begin with. Like, every Marvel criticism, when you start examining the films, and not just enjoying them as on a surface level, but when you start examining the films and interrogating Loki's role in them, we all know, Loki makes the Avengers. That's sort of that's from the comics. So he sort of has to fall into not a great plan, like Tony says, when when they're having the dick measuring contest, right? And in Thor 1, his plans are so scattershot and his motivations seem to change so much. I just recently rewatched this movie, but he's kind of all over the map. Like he's not this master manipulator. He seems to be like this very whimsical sort of like, oh, this is a hindrance. I need to kill it, or I need to get rid of it, or I need to expel it.
He's kind of an opportunity guy.
Yeah.
Right? Like we get this idea that he has a big plan, but I think in the movie, at least in Thor, he's more like I see an opportunity, I'm going to take it. He's really good at that. And kind of he just sort of jumps from one opportunity to the next and makes it work. He's really good at making that shit work.
Yeah, right. Like he has this goal, and he's willing to sort of take whatever sort of series of webs it takes to sort of get there, right?
Yeah.
Like he's trying to get, Thor 1, he's trying to get Thor to get into an argument with Odin to try to get him kicked out and whatever. And what Thor does instead is like, no, you're right. We do have to go to Jotunheim and fight giants. He's like, no, that's so not what I wanted you to do. Okay. I guess we're doing this. I guess we're doing this. And then, which is for me, like a great moment when like later, it has to be like off screen or something, when like Loki realizes on screen he's a frost giant, and then realizes like what Thor has taken him to go do is to go complete the genocide of his own people and kill his biological father. And Thor's like, I don't know what I did wrong, guys. whatever it is, man, I'm sorry.
But by the end of the film, like Loki's gone full heel tone, right? Like, and he's like, I'm going to destroy the whole planet.
All right, I got to bring it.
Self-hating frost giant at that point.
I got to bring us back to the show. Oh, there, Mike had to find the Thanos copter for us. And it must be pretty obscure too, because I heard that the Thanos copter was in the show, and I did a second watching just looking for it, and I still didn't see it. So
there's a whole subgroup of people who just watch on slow-mo looking for stuff like that. So
it's right before they go down the bunker.
Okay.
They go down the bunker, like when they open the hatch, those are the Thanos copter. And then I had to pause the episode and explain the issue of Hellcat to my wife. Be like, okay, this is why this is funny.
So for a long time, about a month now, I have been thinking that the person who's behind the curtain, and they even use that Wizard of Oz reference again in the show, the person behind the curtain is the ultimate version of Loki, that it's the Loki that gets everything he wants. And our Loki, the variant Loki, has to reject that. I don't think that's true anymore. And the reason why is because this episode takes our Loki, the protagonist, everywhere his character needs to go. Like he has now, he sees so many variant versions of himself, and they're all made fun of. Like it's a comedy now. An alternate version of Loki is now something to be mocked. And that ridiculous fight scene when like Mayor Loki, President Loki shows up, and all the Lokis turn on each other. And it's this weird sort of Keystone Cops fight scene. And Tom, our variant Loki, our hero, is just sort of tiptoeing through the fight. Like it's not even serious. It's a comedy. And by the time he gets to the end of the episode, he's talking with Sylvie, and he's like, look, I'm here for you. And maybe we could build a future together, whatever it is. Loki's character arc is done. Everything his character needs to do in terms of transformation has happened. All that's left now is plot. We still have to know, okay, who's behind the curtain? We have to see some kind of justice at the TVA, and we have to get a multiverse. All plot stuff. Now, there's other characters that still have some character arc to go through. But the reason why I say all this is because the point of like if he meets another Loki now, it's no big like
it's a wah-wah moment.
Yeah, exactly. It's a sad trombone sound. We've seen 50 of them by now. Like
and also this episode gives us a spectrum, right? Like so you have the group that he's hanging out with. I'm not including like boisterous Thor is the Loki that gloats, right? Like in the movies when he starts gloating and he's trying to get everyone to kneel and he gives a speech, like that's him. That's that version of him.
Yeah.
And there was also the kid Loki. So it's all of Loki's potential without Thor. Like that's always been sort of like a running thing in Marvel Comics. Like they did it with Doctor Doom a couple years ago, which is what would Doctor Doom be like if there was no Reed Richards?
Yeah.
So like the kid Loki doesn't have a Thor, so he's like ultimate potential. Alligator Loki is survival Loki. And then you have old man Loki, classic Loki, my favorite of all the Lokis.
Yes.
Who stole the show from me.
Yeah.
And he's just a guy who's just outlived his usefulness.
And also he's understood the folly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, when you have Richard Grant conjure a giant phantasmic illusion of Asgard and then shout while laughing about his glorious purpose, it's not subtle, right? Like, it's very obvious. Like, Loki has realized that this ambition he's had in the films is ridiculous. It's absurd and it's pointless. And I love the fact that although Richard, so Film Crit Hulk, who I read a lot, he said, like, look, that scene where classic Loki gives this ridiculous exposition about how he survived Thanos, and he delivers this long exposition in a ridiculously pointed hat, and that's why you hire Richard Grant to do it, right? Because Richard Grant can deliver those lines in a way that is not cringeworthy. Right. But I love the fact that he explains how he survived Thanos by creating an illusion of himself so perfect that even the Mad Titan fell for it. And then he gets, quote unquote, eaten by Elias. And we all know that if Richard Grant can be brought back to the show, like, he's obviously still alive if they want him to stay.
So there's a CGI trick that happens.
Yeah.
And it's not just because I fell in love with this character and I want him all the time, or if they never revisit him, this is just my headcanon.
Yeah.
When he stops projecting Asgard and he's not no longer hiding it, there was a pause where he's not exerting any power. And then when the camera closes in on him, his hands light up green again. Yeah. And like, if he can trick the Mad Titan to create a perfect illusion of him, how can he not trick the audience and a cloud monster?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Richard Grant was a wonderful casting choice, and he really made that character pay off. Yeah.
Hey, Michelson, I have a feeling Michelson's been trying to talk for the last few minutes. I just wanted to give him a chance to speak.
So I don't have a whole lot of the comics knowledge that Jason and Jim have, but I've just been having a great time with like just watching a lot of the story stuff unfold and the acting stuff unfold. Right, just so many fantastic moments, and like and I do my bit of research online, looking into like what could be this sort of mansion that's behind the clouds, right? The curtain of clouds. What could be there? Which I'm going through Sandman again, but I got the editions with which I'm full aware is DC and is not showing up in this. But that's like the House of. I did. I have the annotated versions, which helps me, who does not have like 60 years of comics knowledge and like the 30 years that are pulling from that. But like, that's
when I look at that image behind the clouds, I think I see the Rainbow Bridge. There's that very bright, straight line, glowing white, glowing line of light that cuts across the screen. If it's not the Rainbow Bridge, it's something that looks a lot like it.
Yeah. So I'm sort of mulling around on like who is that? What's going on? I guess there's a house that Marvel has that's where like the one who is above all or whatever like hangs out at sometimes.
Jim, give me a break. Jim, don't bust my chops, okay?
I'm not.
All right, so I want to talk about Renslayer for a minute. Nobody puts 5-6 episodes of time into a character like Renslayer for her to just die at the end of this, right? Like all of these Marvel shows are creating spin-off characters that show up as bad guys or recurring characters farther down the line. I don't know how this is going to pan out, but this has got to be an origin story for Renslayer, right? Like sometime next episode, she's going to find a mask or put on an outfit or pick up a code name or something, and she's going to be revealed as some character from Marvel Comics universe that they have rebranded and remade. I don't know. I don't know who that is, and I'm guessing here, but it just feels like there's so much time has been put into her that I don't think her story could possibly be over.
They've done it before, though. I mean, Marvel has set up characters, and we thought they were going somewhere with them. Shannon Carter in Captain America movies. We were real sure something was happening there, and then all of a sudden, nope, he time travels and cooks up with her aunt. And
well, now she's the power broker.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things to unpack with what Jason's sort of going with in terms of Renslayer. Like I can see a variant, like a version of this playing out. Well, she does. She outlives the story, and she can show up again. But I can also see a version of this where Sylvie's story concludes with her killing the one person who actually stole her life from her.
Yeah,
right.
And being that's the ending of her story.
Sure.
Because the whole point is pointing out to Loki, like, okay, you're going to rule everything. Is that going to make you happy? And he makes a joke of it in this episode, but she's still fixated on like the other character says she needs this.
Yeah.
Like you want it, she needs this. She needs to burn this whole thing down to the ground.
Yeah.
And that may be like maybe the person they position out there is too powerful for her, but she can get the underling. Like Drax doesn't get to kill Thanos, but Drax can help kill off Ronan.
Doesn't that look like the Rainbow Bridge to you guys?
A little bit.
Yeah, I could see. I mean, if they said there was Rainbow Bridge happening there, but I could also see like sort of space nebula type of thing as well.
Because there are multiple lines in there. It's not just it's striped. I don't know.
If someone were to tell me that was the Rainbow Bridge going to a variant Asgard, I would believe it.
Yeah. But Jim has a theory.
I think we could just get just enough to like it could be a bunch of things. Yeah.
Jim.
All right. Jacob Blackman's not here, so I'm doing the thing, guys. Strap yourselves in. All right. The show has made a point of showing us the TVA logo several times, and this episode is no different. We open with that shot where the whole world turns upside down, and the camera sort of rotates, and then it goes up to the elevator, and then that pans to the timekeeper's room, and you see the destroyed robot, right?
Yeah, they linger on the logo for the first time that I really recognize in the show.
All right, now I'm just in a perfect world. If I'm making this show, it's not Kang the Conqueror who's at the end of this story.
Okay.
Kang may have initially created the TVA, hence why the face mask looks very evocative of a Kang the Conqueror face mask. But I think that the guy who's at the end of the story is Immortus, which is Kang's version from the far future, he's already Conqueror. He's no longer the Conqueror, and he's sort of the lazy version. Because this whole story has been a microcosm about how Loki can change. People can change is the theme of this episode.
Yeah.
It's why Richard Grant's classic Loki actually does the thing at the end.
Yeah.
Because he hails that line of dialogue and he's like, oh, okay. And then he has the moment where he can turn away, and then he shows back up to save the day.
For sure.
And if the whole story is setting up like Loki versus Kang struggle is going to be part of these films moving forward, or these TV shows moving forward, what better way to show it than a character that we've seen grow and we've seen evolve versus a character who is stuck in these sort of time periods. Like those the Conqueror Kang. We also see a Sphinx in the background of this episode.
We do.
It's pretty prominent too, and that's Rama Tux, from the old Fantastic Four stories that get shoehorned into this. I didn't see an Eric the Red reference, but I'm sure there may be one in the background.
I still think that introducing a new character in the last episode is a pretty iffy proposition.
I agree with you narratively speaking,
Mhm.
but these TV shows are also designed to propagate into movies.
Yeah, it's a fact. They totally
Like
are. Which
Captain
that's
America
why,
is going to be Captain America. Like Sam Wilson is going to be Cap.
that's why I think Renslayer has got more than this show. I think.
Sure.
One thing so go ahead, Michael.
I was gonna say, I mean, thematically, like a lot of what we're, a lot of the places that we have gone throughout the show, like I've talked about before, a lot of what Loki has seen through his journeys are these means by which people are oppressed, right? Right, through classism, right? We have like monarchy, right? When we're going back to France in the 1500s, right? Like Mary Queen of Scots is like stuff's happening with Mary Queen of Scots in France, but not in that part of France. I was going through history rabbit holes trying to figure out what in the world, why are we in France?
Yeah.
And I think like why we're in France, why we're in Oklahoma, I make sense on a thematic timeline, especially right, like there's no such thing as Oklahoma and in the year that they give us, right?
Yeah.
Oklahoma doesn't exist until the 1900s as a state.
Right.
So looking at right and what has Loki ever wanted to be, right, is to conquer and to be a tyrant, right? Mostly he wants to be a tyrant. He wants to rule. The conquering, the killing, all of that, right, has been sort of a means to an end, right? And like he said, right, to hide himself from being as weak as he feels he is, right? Right. Just certainly finding out that he's the littlest frost giant, right?
Oh my god, I want to write that story.
Right. Certainly can't not be right an element of that, right?
Yeah.
So I think a version of Loki who's done all of this, or a version of Kane the Conqueror who has done all of this, and has come back as a like I'm kind of done, is for me has hints of Odin in it, right? Throughout the Odin, right, throughout the Thor movies, we understand that like while Bor did a lot of the initial sort of conquering of the 9 realms, it was Odin who at least did 1 or 2 of them and then was done, banished Hela, right? Because he got sick of the bloodshed and everything that goes on with conquering, and then went on to have a version of peace that I think is critical of peace that like Asgard's a glowing golden city,
Yeah.
right? And then the beginning of Thor 2, like there's been the smallest amount of gap in Asgardian control, and the planet that looks like it's come off the set of Xena is in full rebellion. Like that doesn't happen if everything is cool.
Yeah.
Right? Like revolutions don't happen with comfortable people. So I think, but these are right from the perspective of Thor, from the perspective of Loki, who think like this is right, like this is peace, this is cool, right? I don't understand why people would not be happy with the things that we have given them, even though like it's right, the rebellion is swords versus laser guns, right?
Yeah.
They're still willing to put that work in, and so seeing someone like a version of Kang the Conqueror who is done and over with, right? Like this version of Loki can get to have that sort of connection with his dad that he never did, because it's not actually his dad, right? It's either himself or Immortalist, or if they're gonna combine some version or something, right? Like thematically in terms of that journey, I think if there's anything else for Loki to do other than just sort of like have the denouement of the climax, of the climax of his emotional arc, either being sitting with himself under a blanket, or having, or right, like standing up against the cloud monster that exists only for that it is introduced and sort of defeated in this sort of penultimate episode, right? I think we getting something along those lines, I think will be we'll have a sort of greater emotional climax in terms of narrative and an arc there. That sort of like the Keystone Cop tiptoeing through the thing, which I adored. I love the sort of like Christmas bowling alley in the post-apocalypse, where the ladder is a bunch of baseball bats.
The set dressing and that, like the set dressing really went out of the way to give us something that was visually interesting. It wasn't just like it could have been like if this was Captain America and the Winter Soldier. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, this would have just been a drab warehouse building, and it would have been like a leak, and that would have been like the one dynamic thing in the room. But they just gave us a lot of like just a visual eye candy that was intentionally silly.
It was Kid Loki's throne, so it was decorated the way a Kid Loki would do it. It was like Home Alone Loki. I loved it.
And Kid Loki is a young Avenger. Kid Loki is all young Avenger tie-in. Like those notes, like even if we had introduced like Old Man and Kang in the Multius in the last episode, there was not enough time to give us Iron Lad, right? Like there was not enough time to give us a young version of that in the last episode. So if you're gonna have someone show up to the Young Avengers, you got the Kid Loki, and he was great. And that means we get Alligator fantastic. Loki, which is the best character ever.
Yes,
like, that's gonna sell more.
Yeah. His delivery of the line "I killed Thor" is so well done that like because he delivers that with like there's boastfulness, like I pulled this off, none of you have been able to pull this off, but also I think that's part of where he and Old Man Loki get along because there's that loneliness, right? They both miss their brother, right? Yeah. Old Man Loki in a way can never know, right? Because in his timeline, right, his timeline's been done away with, right? And young Loki, his brother is no longer there, right? Is dead. I think that's that connection, right? And that grief that's in like that sits underneath that boast. That's also like a statement of that kid's a fantastic actor. Just with that one line, I think he does a lot of work.
Am I the only one confused by the definitions in this show?
Which definitions are you talking about?
Well, we have all these variants, and we have all these sort of like iterations of like, and we're told in the very first episode, like if this is the one timeline, and if anyone divulges from the timeline, they get pruned. Like they get tried and they get pruned. But now we are given like glimpses into like a whole multiverse because Old Man Loki has to exist alongside all MCU Loki, right? Like that's comic book Loki, and this is MCU Loki. Like I don't know how you have that without having a multiverse. Like I'm really confused on the meta.
I think there kind of already is because
we have to know, and we already know that the TVA story is bullshit.
Right.
Because of the ancient one in Endgame, she told us it was. So
that's right. She's talked about a multiverse. The whole thing that when Miss Minutes tells us that there were these infinite timelines and they were at war with each other, and that's why the TVA was created. Okay, there was no such thing, right? How do timelines even war with each other like that? Like how would that even happen? So I think that's all the story that was created to keep the TVA people kind of give them a big lie to believe, right?
It's such a big lie too. Like if you want to have the big lie, usually in fiction you go for something really small that's character driven. Instead we get this giant thing, and the entire time I'm watching this going like I don't understand how female Loki Sylvie exists alongside regular Loki if this is the thing. Like nothing computes for me.
The one thing is I was watching and I saw the void. We spent a lot of time at the void in this episode, right? This sort of moment at the end of time. If I were Kang and I were recruiting an army of pirates, ninjas, cowboys, and robots, this is where I would get them, right? Like I actually want to see the void return in like the Ant-Man story or wherever Kang shows up as the place where he has, like, I want to see him go to the void and recruit the inhabitants of the void as his army. I'm finding now that when the next episode, the final episode is looming, I'm less interested now in what Loki is going to do, because as I said before, I feel like he's already kind of reached the end spot for his character arc. But I'm very interested now. I'm more interested in what Mobius is going to do, right? Like that half of the story. What does Mobius do? He's going back to the TVA. Presumably, he's going to confront Renslayer. He's probably going to break B15, B14, B15 out of prison. He's going to have to somehow raise the TVA as a rebellious army. I don't know. Like, what's going to happen?
Well, I just have to pause you on that.
Yeah.
The actress who did B15, talk about maximizing your minutes. Like that actress in this show is probably in maybe 25 minutes of screen time.
Yeah.
And she goes from being set in the ways, like being a true believer, to having that wonderful moment in the last episode of I Looked Happy, to now just being angry. And she plays angry so wonderfully. Like it's so muted that I was like, oh my God, she's going to kill someone.
Mike is showing us all the jet ski and Agent Mobius's future. Yeah.
I figured I'd make the point better with the video.
If there's no jet ski, I will be a little sad. I'll be more than a little sad if we don't get to see Mobius. Mobius in a frame with a jet ski, I'll be a little sad if it doesn't happen. I'll be a little bit.
I hope that he fell off the jet ski and that's how he broke his nose. Like this is like the variant. Like so because I can't stop staring at his broken nose. And nobody and makeup, you don't give Owen Wilson a permanently broken nose. It's Chekhov's nose. You've got to explain it.
Well, Owen Wilson actually has a broken nose.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he actually that's an actual that's like Clint Eastwood's skull.
That's just his face, man. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, he was in like a ball fight, I think.
Okay, I take it all back then. But I'm more interested now in everybody else's endings than I am in Loki's. I feel like as a writer, as in the writing room was like, well, we have all these stories to wrap up. We got to wrap some of them up in episode 5 so we can have time to do the ones in 6. And I feel like Sylvie and Mobius get episode 6, and Loki kind of gets wrapped up already in 5. But I don't know.
Loki still needs at least one big moment. Like he needs that big like mastermind. If you've ever seen that movie,
he's got to give
cartoon. He needs some big giant set piece moment.
He's got to give Sylvie the dagger. He's got to give Sylvie the dagger because love is a dagger.
Okay.
Yeah. And she has to stab whoever Renslayer or whoever the man behind the curtain is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we've never seen Sylvie's parents either as potential people behind curtains, right?
Presumably,
right? Like presumably an Odin and a variant Odin and variant Frigga.
Yeah.
Or Frigga. I have no idea how it's supposed to be pronounced.
I also thought that maybe there could be a variant Thor at the end of the story.
Yeah.
An evil Thor. Yeah.
Yeah, like an evil Thor could be at the end of the story. Probably more elegantly than Kang would at this point, but like Kang is like the macro plot. Like the Marvel Universe plot.
They can't introduce a new character, but because we're doing variants, they could introduce a variant of another famous character. Pretty much anybody from the movies, they could put in a variant of. It could be variant Thanos for all we know.
Oh my God, that'd be awesome! Like just like 5 minutes of Thanos. Like I was inevitable. I told you it was my catchphrase.
There's going to be an end credit scene of the show finale. And I would be surprised if we don't get a character introduced in that who will lead nicely into Multiverse of Madness. I could be wrong, but
because we got two jumping off points. We got Multiverse of Madness, but we also have Quantum Mania from the Ant-Man.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. We know that Kang's been hired for that, so we've got like these two other like divergent paths that we're going to be taking.
And we have a lot of reports of multiverse shenanigans in No Way Home, the Spider-Man film.
Right. They've got the Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire. Right.
And Molina's come back to play Dr. Octopus. And all kinds of crazy shit's going on in that movie.
Jamie Foxx as well.
I understand it's really hard to work with Andrew Garfield.
Oh,
You can't shoot on Mondays.
She's making a golf
jeez.
joke.
Sorry.
I was
trying to figure it out.
I was trying to see how dry I could make it, and
it was pretty dry.
Yeah, it was. I was like, Andrew, like, he's going to be in the thing with Lin-Manuel where he can sing like an angel. I'm excited for that too. And where Tick Tick Boom is happening, and okay.
Yeah, I was doing a 35-year-old callback to a 3-panel comic strip. That's the highest form of comedy.
I have like 1987 strips of Garfield. I am not unfamiliar with the cat that Joey Clift is also.
So
Michelson was the Otis to your punchline.
Yeah. What?
So wait, No Way Home is this year.
Yep.
It's December 2021.
End of the year.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I got a feeling whatever we see in the end credits might dovetail right into that. So.
Well, or the next. It could be. Or what's we all saw the What If trailer.
Yeah.
That?
Yep.
What If August, right?
Mm-hmm. Is that the next show?
Mm-hmm.
And then we have She-Hulk at some point, right?
Yeah, I love how you're just glossing
as well.
Yeah, I love how you're just glossing over Black Widow like it's not even happening, Jason.
I know I'm going to go see it this weekend in an actual movie theater. I'm looking forward to it.
Look at you going to it like in the before times. Okay.
Yeah. The halcyon days of 2019. Yeah.
I'm firm on Team Agoraphobe. Mm-hmm. I can wait till that comes on iTunes in like 3 months.
Now I want to go to a theater again. It is me flipping off the universe.
I totally
miss theaters so much,
but just not for me.
Yeah.
I'm not on board with the $20 to watch it on my laptop or my TV. Like, if I'm gonna spend money to go see this, it's gonna be in a big screen with a giant bucket of popcorn that nobody has been able to replicate with a microwave.
Yeah.
So soon I'm gonna go see Black Widow.
Even What If ties into the multiverse, right? I mean, that's the whole part of What If too, and like this show kind of leads right into that. So yeah, it's.
I gotta tell you, I've got this feeling, the same kind of feeling I had at the end of Empire Strikes Back. But I'm like, hey, that was a satisfying movie. That was a satisfying movie, not as good as the first one, but I liked it. And oh god, they're gonna screw it up, aren't they? As I lurch into the next phase of Marvel movies, that's kind of the trepidation I have. I hope they don't. I hope it's all cool and keeps on being quality entertainment. But I just see what's coming, and I'm like, that might be a tough needle to thread with some of these characters. Like,
I'm really excited to the upcoming films. I think Shang-Chi looks fantastic.
It does.
And I love Doctor Strange. I love Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange. So I'm all.
I believe it's pronounced Cumberbund, but yes, I do too. Go ahead, sorry, Jim.
It's all right. I think the next phase is about representation, right? Like it's like the critique you can have for phases 1 through 3. A lot of white. Every movie is led by a white male heterosexual actor.
Yeah.
And now this next wave, like the very first movie out the gate is female led, and I think we're going to be seeing more representation in phase 4.
Yeah, there was this wonderful essay written by a television writer, and I don't know her name off the top of my head, but she was writing about going to see Black Widow at last after she's been waiting years for the Black Widow movie. And she remembers going to see Ant-Man, and it was like, it was a charming and delightful movie, but it was just Iron Man with a slightly different guy in a slightly different suit,
Which should have been the Luis Peña's character steals those whole movies for me, and he's the only person I want to see. I just want to see him and his locksmith company and his buddies. And growing and shrinking can like where's Scott? Like, who cares? He's got to do this other thing. I have to tell you this. I have to tell you this story.
I like Ant-Man a lot. I like those films, and I have a long sentimental attachment to the character, the Scott Lang version of the character. I was just agreeing with Jim. Like, I think that there's definitely some representation issues. We still have a lot of white men leading these films. We still have Spider-Man as the flagship character.
I mean, how many Toms and how many Chris's do we have?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, can I just ask you guys one question?
Yeah.
corporate America, of which Hollywood is a manifestation, tends to be heterosexual, male and white. Does it tend to get representation right a lot?
Oh, it gets it wrong often. That's why all of the Pride stuff is gone, and now that it's July, right? Like,
but I think it
makes money. It makes it's making money because they're realizing there's a lot of money that's left on the table. Franklin Leonard, who's the guy behind the Blacklist. I got a weird opportunity in Santa Fe to run into him one time and get to talk to him. But he has talked about and is shown that Hollywood leaves money on the table by not having diverse casting, and that weirdly that he's recently found out and has talked about the Fast and the Furious movies have done incredible work for Hollywood to convince Hollywood that they are leaving money on the table because they are extremely well returning movies with wildly diverse casts. And we're getting to see, like, you get Aquaman, which, you know, as good or as bad as Aquaman was, made $billion+ dollars, directed by I forget where that guy is from, but he's Asian director. He's the guy behind the first Conjuring movies, the guy behind the first Saw movie. James Wan, thank you. Is my wife's favorite director, and his name just escaped my brain because I needed it. And then led by half white, half Hawaiian Hunk, right?
Yeah.
I have a personal story with that. I was in Hawaii when that movie debuted. It was packed. The movie theater I was on the Big Island. The movie theater was packed. At the very end of the movie, when Aquaman does the fire dance. I had actually participated in that event the previous night, so I knew what he was doing, like, intellectually. Yeah. The crowd in that theater erupted. It was the biggest pop I've ever been in. People were dancing with Aquaman.
This idea that creators are leaving money on the table when they don't recognize previously underrepresented voices. It's happening not just in film. It is happening in film, but it's also happening in things like comic books themselves, right? Marvel's been doing this in comics for a long time, and in gaming. I'm going to sidetrack us for a second. I finally got my copy of the Mwangi Expanse book today.
Awesome.
This is a 300-page book about Afrocentric fantasy. It takes all of it ignores all of those ridiculous, like, Orientalism and colonialism tropes that role-playing fantasy has had, and instead, like, you know, creates this fantastic setting where where you're looking at the people that live in this Afro fantasy place from their own perspective, rather than from an outsider's perspective, in which everybody who lives in Africa is exotic, right? And this book is making us a ton of money, you know, and it's so, yeah, you're right, right? Like, capitalism is evil, but sometimes when capitalism can realize there's a market, the Venn diagram crosses over, and you get good books about underrepresented voices, or good films, or good comics, and especially when you put the people in charge that can speak from a position of authenticity, right? So you hire a woman to make a movie about a female superhero. You hire a black filmmaker to make a movie about Black Panther. You know, and you, instead of, like, Denny O'Neil trying to write Power Man and Iron Fist, right? Like, his heart was in the right place, and I am not here to say any shade on Denny O'Neil, who I revere like unto a god. But
and that's why I didn't pounce.
Yeah, but you don't. But if a black writer had been writing Luke Cage, we would not be getting Sweet Christmas.
That's
right.
For what it's worth, the one time I talked to Denny O'Neil back in my journalist days, he referred to himself off the record. Sorry, Denny, you're dead now. I can sell his story. As being the high priest of a religion he didn't believe in, for being the head of Batman. So, Michelson, you were saying something?
Yeah, I mean, so that's like gaming, like television. I mean, we're getting so much good. Like, so being Indigenous, I pay attention to all kinds of that stuff, right? TV, we're about to we have on Peacock, we have Rutherford Falls, which has been awesome. Like, guys, Migazy has like a small part in that, but I went to grad school with him at IIA. So like people I know are in this show.
Yeah.
Joey, we're about to get Spirit Rangers, which is a kids show.
Okay.
Taika Waititi is best friends with this native filmmaker, Sterling Harjo. So he's producing a show for FX that Sterling Harjo is directing called Reservation Dogs. One of the posters for it is very much out of the Quentin Tarantino movie, but just teenagers like walking through a res.
That's funny.
Which Rutherford Falls is getting a second season on. It's a fantastic comedy. George R. Martin, who lives in Santa Fe, which is where the Institute of American Indian Arts is pairing up with a couple people to put together Driftwinds. I think it's what it's called. I just found out about it recently. I think I retweeted it. But it's, again, an entirely native actors room, right? Like, this is stuff that like is coming. It's stuff that we're seeing, right? In gaming, right? Like, Coyote and Crow is supposed to come out in December, which is all Indigenous writing team, all Indigenous art team. The book, right? Like, there's no physical book yet. The Kickstarter made over $1 million, right? Like, it's $1 million of money for the idea of a book, right? Like, there's so much money. Like, people who want to see themselves are willing to pay to do that. And, you know, and eventually corporate America will hire the right people. Yeah. Eventually corporate America will hire the right people. And I'm also excited for like when it starts to not. There's this moment I've heard Chris Rock talk about, where he says, he's like, baseball didn't get actual equality until like the late 70s, early 80s, where you had mediocre black baseball players. He's like, that was equality. We're like, you had guys who were like, yeah, who gives a shit, right? Like, that's when we start to get to like an even place. And I'm excited for like, this is just fucking Coyote and Crow, but with, you know, it's, you know, fucking Seminoles are doing it this time. Like, sure, whatever, right? Like, I'm so stoked for that, right? Like, it's a Métis version of whatever, right? Like, the fucking Quechuas are getting in on it, right? Like, 100% stoked for that. Like, just to like have just a glut of material to just be like, nah. Well, but right now, it's like, I'm going to pay $50 for a book that doesn't exist, because once it does, and it might even be great, right? Like, and usually the first thing of something, right? Like, I will give an amount of leniency to people who like Lord of the Rings is a beloved series and it has its problems, but right, like blazing a trail, right?
Right.
And that first trail is usually garbage, right? Like,
yeah,
because it's the first path that got from A to Z, right? But it took, you know, all of these weird paths to get there. And since then, right, like, and I find this not just in like fantasy novels, right, but in all kinds of other places, right? Like, as people come in and start to develop, right, and you get these other voices in there and start to go like, you know what, like, this is really cool, and then this was weird, and I don't know why we did this, and we don't need to do this, and it hurts people for that we did this. Let's just go ahead and get rid of that. Right, that path starts to get better and better and better as we keep sort of going through it, and people start looking at things, right? And I think that's part of where we're going. Yeah.
I had someone describe that phenomena to me once as you have the innovators, then you have the imitators, then you have the idiots. And they were describing market dynamics, but I think they can kind of go cultural with that too.
In film, we talk about the maturation of genre, how a genre gets defined, and then how it matures. the example of this is the Western. Like a lot of people tried to make Westerns, and they were kind of unsuccessful until Shane. And Shane becomes the first really successful Western, and it defines the genre. And then for decades, we just make various versions of Shane. And they vary a little bit. Like, okay, this time it's Shane, but it's, it's got John. Yeah. But then, so that's the first phase, like the experimentation, until you get one that like really finally clicks. And Lord of the Rings is your example, Michael. So like there were fantasy novels before Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah.
But they weren't as popular as Lord of the Rings. So then you establish the genre, and then you have this kind of golden age where everybody just riffs on the formula. Especially Hollywood does this because making a movie.
I mean, you look at Hollywood's past; it's like
Hollywood requires so much money. Making a movie is so expensive that Hollywood has to have a formula before they'll really invest in it. So then once they get a formula, then they just play it out, and then you hit the third phase where everybody recognizes the formula. Now you've been watching superhero movies for 20 years. And so now we can fuck with the genre and you'll get the jokes because you understand the formula. So now we can do The Boys and we can do, all kinds of other sort of satire, or we can even, or something like Suicide Squad, which is taking the superhero tropes that you've already been watching and inverting them. You see this a lot. The zombie movies have been doing this for a while now too, right? But we all know what a zombie movie is. So now we'll do Zombieland. And we'll just make fun of it, right? We'll just make it like a game. Yeah.
I should point out that the new podcast series we're doing with Jason, focused on media critique, is going to be called "Fuck with the Genre." Coming soon to iTunes. And on that happy note, my wife's mad at me. I need to wrap up the episode. So we will see you guys next Friday on time to talk about Loki some more. So wait, I have to play the outro. Sorry, it's required. All right. See you later. Take care. Thanks, guys.